All right, now I want to get into layers and selections. All right, and I gave you guys some sample files to play with as we go through this. I want to give you guys some practice with this, because this is where Photoshop gets really powerful and really fun. Okay, so we're going to start by talking about layers. All right, layers, what we can do with layers. I gave you guys some sample files, and on the next slide, you don't do it right now. On the next slide, I'll ask you to open those files. But the purpose of going through those is to get you guys comfortable, give you an introduction to how layers work, what they look like, all right? So layers gives us the ability to do a lot more with our images. One, we can composite images. You're going to see actually on the sample file that I gave you that it's actually a whole number of photographs that are put into one design really easily. In fact, I also gave you a couple photographs on what we're going to practice. We're going to do that sky replacement thing I was telling you guys about. So we have the ability with Photoshop, this is beyond what Lightroom can do, to take multiple images, bring them into one document, and composite artistically how, what that image is going to look like. Essentially create things that didn't actually exist or weren't actually there. Not to say that you are always going to want to do that. We're also going to look at some simpler things that we can do with layers as well that are really helpful, fun, and creative, but don't necessarily go far beyond the borders of reality. With layers, we can have non-destructive edits. We have the ability, so yesterday when we were making edits, most of us were actually editing destructively. So we were actually, when we do, I want to show you a different way to make adjustments today. We went to image adjustment. When you go to image adjustment, you're actually manipulating the pixel information of that image. There are other ways that you can actually do that. So Nicole actually yesterday, when she was doing it, she automatically, just like force of habit, she duplicated the background layer. So the background layer was the original image, and the layer that she was editing was a second layer. So the original information was protected. She just naturally did that, okay? That's one of the ways we can edit non-destructively. There's also different types of layers that we can use to do that. Other things we can do, we can add text, we can do graphic treatments, you can have drop shadows, you can do all kinds of things. Photoshop is an incredibly powerful program. So as we do it, it's easy to add layers with this little button here, delete layers with the universal, everyone knows trash can means get rid of stuff, clean house. We can move layers. We can move layers up and down in the hierarchy. So, which changes what things look like visibly. Basically, think of layers as, it's the first time I can use this analogy and people actually know what I'm talking about. So it's hard to come up with an analogy to talk about layers. And I like to use sheets of transparency. And you guys know what sheets of transparency are. This is amazing. So the 18-year-olds, when I say sheets of transparency, they're like, what? What do you mean transparency paper? So imagine you have a photograph at the bottom. You have a sheet of transparency that has something on it. You have another sheet of transparency that has something on it. Another sheet of transparency that has something on it. The layers at the top obscure what is at the bottom, but we can reorder them. We can move them in the hierarchy up and down, and that will change what that looks like, what the image actually looks like. You can change the opacity of layers. You can actually knock back the color of a layer so that it's like, okay, that's a little bit too much. I'm going to knock down that effect so that it feels more reasonable. We can change the opacity. So we have the opacity of the layer right here. There's a whole bunch more that we're not going to get into. There's this really cool thing called blending modes that you guys should check out. It's really neat at some point, but you don't have to. You can also toggle the visibility of the layer. You know what? I didn't like that, but I spent a lot of time on it, so I'm going to keep it. So I'm just going to hit this visibility icon that looks like an eyeball, and it disappears. It goes away. But I don't have to lose it. I can keep that information for future reference. And if you're a visual communicator outside of photography, there's really cool applications for that. Adobe products play incredibly well together. So I can't imagine most of you are using Adobe InDesign. Anyone? Okay. You can take a Photoshop file, a PSD file, into InDesign, and then in InDesign, access the layers and turn layers on and off. So you can have one file, copy it multiple times, change the visibility of the layers in InDesign, and the photo and that image will look different. Even though it's one file, it'll look different throughout that InDesign document, which is actually kind of a cool thing in a way. So lots of cool functionality. We have a number of different types of layers, and depending on the type of layer, that changes what you can do to it. We have background layer. By default, background layer will just say background and be italic. You don't actually have to have a background layer, but most images will have a background layer. There are things you can't do to a background layer. We have like things like I was talking about drop shadows, we have effects. You can't apply those to a background layer, okay? But image layer, very similar to a background layer, an image layer, these are just pixel information layers. An image layer is just like a background layer, but now you can apply effects to it and do a lot of, basically do anything to it, okay? We can have type layers. Our type layers are layers that just have, they're indicated by the little T, so you can have type. Photoshop is not typically where you want to do a lot of typography, but if it's a tool that you're comfortable with and you don't know how to use some of these other tools, it's fine. And you can use Photoshop for some typography because I will get into raster versus vector graphics, but it's not necessarily, you shouldn't be designing logos and business cards in Photoshop, but you kind of can. You shouldn't be, there's better tools, but you can have type. And then adjustment layers. This is the really powerful part of non-destructive editing. And they're wonderful. So this icon right here that Nikole has the cursor over is an adjustment layer. And a lot of the adjustments that you can make to an image through image adjustment, you can also make with an adjustment layer. But now the adjustment is not to the pixels, but to just a layer that can be turned off and on. And then another advantage of an adjustment layer is if you make an adjustment to the image, to the pixels, like I go in there, I move the sliders and levels, and then I click OK, it applies to the pixels. I cannot re-edit that information. If it's in an adjustment layer, I make those edits, I go away, I go back to the adjustment layer, all of the information from those edits still exists and still in there, and I can fine tune that and play with it. So really, really handy. All right, so we're going to start with a really basic exercise here. So let's go to, there you go. I want you to go to, so you guys, I gave the files to, you're looking for this PS31 and PS32. Everyone else, I want you to go to File, Open, and you're going to find there's a drive called Student Files. So one of the things I don't think I said yesterday that is kind of cool and makes it easy to figure out if you got all the files open. The files work like panels as well. So you see these tabs at the top? Each file has its own tab. So if you only have one tab, you only have one file open. All right, so I just want to show you guys how to do some really basic things here. And just to get you comfortable with how layers work. It's not terribly complicated, but it does take a little bit of practice to get used to and get comfortable with. So the first, I don't have my instructions up here, but I think the first thing I said to do is I want you guys to just move something within the document. So move a layer. And the one I told you to do is you would click on the Darth Vader layer, hold, and drag it below the lighthouse balloon layer. And then watch what happened visibly when you did that. So you can actually change what the image looks like by putting objects in front of and behind one another. So go ahead and try doing that right now. Just click and drag, find your layers panel if it's not up. No, it's just it's actually really easy, but very powerful. We can change the way the image looks greatly by doing that. And I don't remember my instructions said, so I'm just going to go off script here. As long as we're all doing the same thing, it's all right. Okay. Now we can also move things like X, Y axis. So I want you to find the move tool, which is the cursor at the upper left in your tools panel. Okay. Once you have the move tool selected, I want you to make the black striped balloon layer active. So click on that layer. Now, once you have that layer active, I want you to, with the move tool, click on the balloon, which is this guy right here. That's the black striped balloon, and move it to the right. You can actually move isolated areas of this image. Move it anywhere you want. And now, just for funsies, I will. Oh, she's got it.
Oh, okay.
She did it.
Thought you were looking for help. Sorry, Carol.
So now, just for funsies, I want you to select the Darth Vader balloon layer, and we're going to move him. Now move back into the image, click on him, and move him to the left. So now, I mean, you guys can actually all have completely different images, even though we all have the same basic pixel information. Everybody has a completely different image.
And some of you might see some pink lines as you're moving it. That is Photoshop just telling you what you're moving, how it's in line with other things in the photo. So like I have mine selected, and the horizontal line is telling me that I am centered in the photo as far as top to bottom. And the vertical line means that the edge of Darth Vader is centered with that green balloon image. And if I move it, now I'm centered in a part of a grid of that left hand of the sky, but I'm still centered from top to bottom
So you
of the
can,
image. So you can line things up very easily.
Yeah,
It's kind of a smart tool that Photoshop has built in.
I think it's called Smart Guides, just like
I
it's
think
in
so.
Illustrator. So it's a really cool thing, and it actually will even, like Damien just found, you can actually use that feature to, space objects exactly. Like he actually just had 3 of his balloons precisely spaced out so the space between them was exactly the same. So all kinds of flexibility and fun you can use here. If you're having fun now, you ain't seen nothing yet. We're not done. But wait, there's more. All right. So now, I gave you this file so you could play with things and make it really easy. But obviously, you're not going to just have files that already have things in layers for you. So we're going to show you how to use a basic selection tool. We're going to do a lot of different selection tools to get into, so it'll be so much fun. But we're just going to do some really basic things with some selection tools. And we're going to show you how to add another balloon to this image. So now I want you to go to PS32. Okay. And we're gonna use like one of the really easy selection tools here. So up here in the tools panel in the upper left, there's a tool called the Quick Select tool. I want you to find and choose the Quick Select tool. Oops, 2 down. The Quick Select tool is super fun. If you're having trouble finding the Quick Select tool, it is paired with the Object Selection tool. Okay, once everybody has the Quick Selection tool, I'm going to take your time, and if you raise your hand if you're having a hard time finding it. So the Quick Select tool, there's all kinds of different selection methods in Photoshop. The Quick Select tool is a color-based selection tool. It's like basically it's really slick and easy. It's super fun. I click, I paint. Where I paint is selected, and then the software also examines the color and will expand to select similar colors. So I want you to take your quick select tool and just paint in the sky. And then let go after a little bit. And then you can paint more if you until, just keep going, just make sure you see how it snapped to the edge of the balloon, and then paint on the other side. And don't worry if it's perfect, it's not gonna be perfect, and that's okay.
And if it's not allowing you to click and click again and add to the selection, because some of, I don't know if it's like preset or anything, up here, just below where it says image layer and type.
Yeah.
Then you want the center one with the plus selected, because that will allow you to click once, and if it doesn't select everything you want, you can click again and it will add to your selection. Versus if I had, I'm gonna deselect everything here. If I had this, the one on the far left selected, it's only gonna select what I click on, and if I click again, it's not adding to the selection, it's making separate selections. So if you wanna add, oh, it just automatically did that, didn't it? Because I clicked here, let me deselect everything again.
I've got a part of the balloon.
That's what I was
Right.
doing. So another part is, so I didn't want to interrupt Nicole there. If you end up with part of the balloon selected, there's a couple of things you can do, and I don't want to overcomplicate this right now. So like, if I do this, I can't do that, Nicole's got control.
Oh,
That's all right.
okay.
Okay.
There's the balloon.
And now, there are more complicated ways, that actually, they're not terribly complicated to fix that. But if you do something like that and you want to start over, Command D deselects, or Control D deselects, and you can start over.
Okay.
Now, you can go back and forth with the selection tools, but I want to simplify this for right now. So just, and you don't want to select the balloon, so deselect, and you're just selecting the sky. Just select the sky.
The whole sky?
The whole sky, all the sky, until all the sky is selected. Oh, and you don't want to touch the balloon when you do it.
So deselect will select everything, and like Jay said, there's multiple ways.
It'll
to
get
do it.
rid
You
of the
wanna-
whole selection.
Or yeah, it'll get rid of the whole selection. But let's say only like that red part, and it took me forever to select the sky. You can hold down the Alt key, I believe. Which one is it?
Yeah, that's all key.
Your Alt key, you see a minus sign.
So you can
In
add
your
and
circle.
subtract.
Now I'm gonna click on the balloon part that's selected here. And it undid that red. Now it's undoing the yellow, undo that yellow.
So there's lots of flexibility to
So I
add
can-
and subtract from selections.
Right, so now I'm just painting over all of this. I have now deselected the balloon and now I only have the sky again.
So
So you
the,
have to hold down Alt that whole time.
so the reason why we did it this way is because sometimes it's easier to select what you don't want than what you do want, okay? But you can do that, and then if you go to the selection menu up at the top, and you can tell it inverse. And then instead of having the sky selected, you will have the balloon selected. All right, now we're gonna play a little game. I don't want anyone to do this. I want Nicole to demo it first, and you guys just to watch, because this is kind of tricky. There's a little game we're gonna play. It's called click and hold and drag and don't let go. Okay, so what she's gonna do is, now that she has that inverted, she's gonna go back to her move tool. She's gonna come back down, she's gonna click and hold. She's gonna drag that up to PS31 and wait until that's active. She did not let go, and now she's gonna bring it down in. Now she's gonna let go, and now that balloon's in that image.
And over here.
It's
is
like magic.
Layer 1, right here, that's my new layer.
So grab your move tool, and then click the balloon, hold, drag up to that 3-1 tab, and hold it there until it's active. It's okay if you mess it up, you can just go right back to 3-2 and try again.
And the addition in where it adds in your list of layers, it will add it to the layer that you had or add it above the layer you had previously selected. So you can purposely arrange your layers
Oh, good though.
prior to, if you had like forethought or a plan on purpose of, I want this in front of this, but behind this. And that will make more sense as we go, but it will arrange it above the layer that you had previously selected.
And now you could move that balloon around, move it up and down in the hierarchy, do whatever you'd like with it. So you can see it's actually pretty easy to move things back and forth and manipulate and make it whatever you want to be. I hear the wonderful sound of kids clicking going on. This is kind of like the equivalent to, like, you know, if you made a good meal because everybody stops talking. Oh, wait, there's more. You guys get tired of playing with that, let me know, and go ahead and close those down. Don't have to save them. We have some other files. I'm going to show you something a little bit more practical. Although that's lots of fun. You guys are actually doing really great. This is going super smooth. All right, looks like most people are ready to move to the next thing. So the next thing I want to do is, we're going to do this. Okay, so
Are we done with those other pictures?
yeah, you can close the balloon files. So now I want you guys to go to File, Open, and go to the Photoshop drive. All right, so I want you to take a, obviously have two photographs here. We have this nice, beautiful sunset sky or sunrise sky. And then we have this amazing architecture of this building, this home, but it has a really boring sky. It's just terrible, okay? All right, so what we're gonna do is, we're gonna do something very similar. We're gonna do it slightly differently this time. I want you to, with the photograph of the home active, grab your move tool. That's the upper left, the top tool in your tools panel. And we're going to play the game that you click and drag and don't let go. You're going to click and you're going to drag that up into the Sky Photo tab. Hold on to it. Don't let go. Bring it down into that image and drop it. So you should have 2 layers once you do that successfully. Well, one thing that I can have you guys do here while we're that we won't leave Damien behind is I'm going to show you guys how to do another thing. So the image of the house is actually bigger than the image of the sky. So I want to show you guys how to zoom in and out first. So I like to just use Control plus and minus. So everybody hit Control minus to zoom out a little bit. So you can see more of the image, okay? And notice, like, some of you guys are seeing like a bounding box, like Dan has a little pink box indicating that this photograph actually goes beyond the image area of that sky image. Okay, so what I'm going to have you do now is I'm going to teach you a new little trick. Here, I'm going to teach you guys to transform. So there's a shortcut for it, but I'll show you as well. You can go to, I think it's Edit, I don't never actually, yeah, edit and transform. I actually just use Control T. That's the shortcut.
And transform.
And you can just use transform. You can just use the free transform. Okay. And now your image has a bounding box with handles, and you can shrink the image down to fit with the sky, so you get more of the architecture. You're not cropping the architecture. And by default, Photoshop now should constrain. It used to be that you had to actually use the shift key to constrain, but now it just constrains on its own. So go ahead and do that to your liking, however you'd like, so that you have as much of the architecture as you would like to have in the image. And then when you're happy, all you have to do to complete the transformation is hit the enter button, and that completes the transformation.
And you can do the arrows on the white parts of the blue, but you can also move the image. Just click anywhere in the image and you can move it over. And again, if I move it over far enough, you'll see a pink line. That means I'm
Oh, actually,
centered.
remember you're using the move tool.
If that's a huge, issue for you. And then if I wanted to move up, I get the vertical line. So now I am completely centered with the image behind it.
And then bring it down and drop.
What was the shortcut?
Okay. And now
Control
press
T.
Control T. You can do it however you want it. I mean, if you want your house to be smaller, this is your creative choice. There's no right or wrong answer on this. We're just having fun. So there's lots of ways to do what we're about to do here. We're going to do sky replacement. So go ahead. Once you're happy, hit enter to complete your transformation. So you should just have like these two basic layers. Now, what I want you to do is we're going to go back to that quick selection tool, and you're going to select that sky again. You're going to use it to select the sky just like you did with the balloon.
And if you look up on my screen, for some reason, my quick select tool is super tiny. You can make that bigger by doing the brackets that are just kind of below your backspace key, below the plus and minus. The one on the left makes it bigger. And that will help with the selection process. It will select a bigger area.
That's correct. There you go.
The bracket keys.
If you want to
Yeah.
remove part of it.
Oh,
Actually, hang on a second. Let's take a step back, because I don't want you guys, don't worry about making the selection perfect, because I'm going to show you another set of the technology here that is going to make life really cool. All right. I'm going to teach you guys something called layer masks. All right. Just wait for her to catch up here. So don't feel like it has to be perfect, because we're gonna show you this really cool flexible thing that's gonna make life easier. Okay, so the reason why I told you not to worry about it being perfect is because I'm gonna show you something else that's really cool. Notice that mine is not perfect, that Nicole's is not perfect. This part of the roof is actually part of the selection that she has right now. So instead of deleting the pixels, we're going to mask the pixels. What that means is we're going to hide them. We're not actually going to make them go away. And this gives us a tremendous amount of flexibility. To mask, on the layers panel, see this icon right here? That's the masking functionality. The mask will be based on the selection that you created. So I'm going to click that. And now it's basically created a mask from what I selected. Okay. Now here's the cool part. So this is
go back and do that. Wait, Terry missed it.
Control Z. Okay. All you have to do with the selection is now hit this little mask icon right here on the layers panel. Okay. So let's now, what we've just done, we've created a mask. Now note, we have the image icon in the layer panel, and we have a mask thumbnail in the panel now as well. And essentially the mask is wherever it is black, those pixels are concealed. Wherever it is white, those pixels are revealed. That's our little silly little saying, black conceals, white reveals, black conceals, white reveals. The cool part here is how flexible this is. So Nicole is gonna get her brush over here from the tools panel. And we're gonna fix this layer mask, okay? So she's grabbing her brush, the brush tool, shortcut key is B. She's going to paint with black, so she's got black selected for her foreground color. And now she's going to paint over that area of the image that has the roof that didn't get selected before. And you can see it disappearing as she paints over it with black.
I'm gonna zoom in just a little bit because I'm kind of anal sometimes and like I want that edge. So I'm gonna zoom in with Control Plus so that I can see that edge a little bit better. Then I can go through, and if I wanted to, I could make this brush smaller. Same way with what we did with the quick selection tool, you can use your brackets. The right bracket makes it bigger, left bracket makes it smaller, so I can maybe a little bit easier
Okay, perfect.
get that edge
So you just
with this smaller brush.
Control Z.
So
Make sure you select the mask.
How do you
have
switch to the
use
black?
the
I
mask.
asked the lighter.
Now-
So, you can either just click on the black or you can press X.
And there is, let me tell you guys another little trick that makes this a little easier if you have a hard edge like this. So I'm actually going to bring that back a little bit. And then I'm gonna toggle back to my black. I'm gonna show you, there's actually this really cool functionality.
Yep, pull the whole thing in, and you can make
If
the
you
brush
hold
bigger,
shift
so it goes-
with your brush tool, so I can actually click in a spot, now hold the shift key, move over here and click, and it will create a straight line for me.
How do we make the brush bigger?
Now,
The bracket keys. There's two ways. I like the bracket keys. There's also this dialog up here at the top. This, you can always go up here and manipulate the size of your brush up here. And then you can change the size and the hardness of the brush. And whatever you do, don't worry about it. We're just having fun. Just play with it. So you're getting comfortable with what's happening. Just try to paint that so that that part of the roof that didn't get done before is now masked out.
Do control, do your control minus, so you zoom out a little bit.
It's, well, your brush is so small that you're just getting the possible.
What I was asking about, I can't get access to
So now,
that.
and your hardness is already
Oh, just press X on your.
I'm not sure. Also. Here. Or.
It might be, click on your brush tool, and now try your X.
Okay. And now go ahead and paint over that part of the roof. And you want to zoom in.
I've played with this before, on my other computer.
Right.
Now,
I wonder if.
don't worry about it being perfect.
Maximize your screen or minimize.
And then you can also go there and put however. Now just,
That might be a J question. I've never had that
You
happen
can do it
before.
anywhere you want. Have fun with it. Well, that's where that shift click thing comes in. I was talking about. So, you can click on a spot, hold shift, move your mouse, and then hold
Pull
shift
your
and
brush
push again, and it will actually create
Because
a
if
straight line.
you color on
Here, let me
this
show you
mask,
one.
what is it?
So I can actually use it here. I want a really clean edge.
Oh.
Grab my brush.
So now, for some reason,
I can hold the shift.
when you did Control Z,
Oh,
but I don't know why.
Full moon this week.
I guess, so click on over
All
here,
we do is,
It's called shift clicking, you get
Yep,
those
and
straight
then,
lines.
select the mask part of the layer first, or?
You after, so
Oh,
just
okay.
you click, now, like, well, actually, just click in one spot,
Okay,
like,
now,
right on that edge there,
because now it's
like up here, right? We're gonna try to go across. Click.
Oh,
Now let
okay,
go.
I'll do control Z because we are actually, that's what I thought.
Wind up as best
So when
can,
you have
follow
this
the shift
selected, you're actually looking on the image itself, not on the mask.
That's okay, that's all right, we'll do
When
it
you're
again.
working with the
There,
mask, make
now
sure
we'll
that
come
the
back,
mask is
like
selected.
here.
Okay, now it's.
Because we're on the image and we're actually using clean instead of a mask. So we might have to call Jay to help with that. Thank you, I'll practice.
That's all right, that's what it takes, you're all good.
Jay, we have a question over here.
Yes.
He can't get his colors to change for some reason, like with the X key. So go back to your mask. And it's white, but when he clicks the X, or when he presses X, it doesn't change to black. So that he can- And I've never seen that before, so I don't know if that's something that.
Sorry.
I've done it. I've done it before. So I don't know. I'm trying to.
Trying to see if there's something going on that would actually be disabling the.
Oh. Yeah, because we actually, there's not one listed on our roster. So yeah, that was one of the things that we were gonna get from, and we forgot to do that yesterday. So that
So
was.
you can't change it either way.
So we can get it at the class, yeah.
Oh,
I keep getting double funnel.
Oh.
I think the tools panel is actually
You are where you're supposed to be.
here.
Yep,
Hit that
even if
little
you have
button
to
there.
have the balls there, yep.
There you go. Now hit that, okay, cancel.
So
I think it's
maybe
having.
now we're now.
There we go. It just wasn't visible.
You were looking at that and the arrows, you couldn't actually see your foreground background color.
Let's play with
So
it.
it was
after-
working. All right,
after
bear
we
with
get
me here,
everything
I'm
done,
trying to
because
get
it'll
everybody
be easier
on
to send it
in the
back
same
to
place.
everyone and so we can send it.
Oh, so the hardest of the brush, you can come up here and click on that, the brush, the next one.
It might. I mean, well, it'll, even if the hard doesn't show, it'll still be a less interesting sky than what we had before.
All right, so I want to go to the next thing here. I know we're having fun playing with the brushes, and this is now stuff that kind of takes some practice. Press Control-0 to zoom all the way out. And now we're going to, because obviously we did the exact opposite. We selected what was easy, not what was hard. We actually want the house, not the blue sky. So with the thumbnail of the layer mask selected, Nikole is going to go to Image, Adjustment, and she's going to choose Invert. She's going to invert the color. White's going to become black, and black's going to become white. Go to Image. So let me show you something here. Let's talk about this for a second, because what happened is you have to pay attention to whether or not your image or your mask are selected. If you invert the color and the image is selected, it will invert the color of the image. We want to invert the color of the mask, okay?
And that goes the same too. So if you're using your brush
Black and white.
and you want to adjust what's on your mask, you have to have the mask over here selected. If you have your image selected, you will be painting on your image. Just like, so I have my brush and it's black. I have the image
Nice.
over here selected.
Very nice.
I'm now painting a black line on my image. That has nothing to do with the mask. And if you do that, just hit Control Z and it goes away.
Yep.
And then
Still all
click on your mask,
This is a
and
very
then
non-destructive
do
technique.
whatever you want to do on your mask. So Photoshop is a very powerful tool, but it's also a very picky tool as to what you have selected and what you're doing and whether it's going to work or not.
And there are some things, I mean, the reality is that there's a lot about this that takes practice. So don't feel like frustrated if it didn't come easy, because because it doesn't come easy to anybody. Like, Nicole and I have been using these tools, you know, we've got like a collective, like 30 years of experience using this stuff, so. Kara's getting all creative over there.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah, she's like doing all kinds of fun stuff.
All by accident.
Hey, you know,
Hey,
sometimes, and what did Bob Ross call them? We have happy accidents.
Yes.
We have happy little happy accidents. We love the happy accidents.
My building is too big, so I didn't get as pretty sunset.
And that's okay. Actually, the cool thing is, you can actually still transform that layer.
yeah,
You can also still move that layer. Like, let's say here, Nicole's like, you know what? I want more of the sky. And I don't care about this. I'm actually gonna move the whole thing down.
Move it,
You
yeah.
can just move that whole layer with the move tool, move it down. And then she will have to remove some more of the sky up there. But that's
Right.
okay.
so
Because
now I
that's
just
all-
go in here on my mask,
Grab a brush.
grab my brush, make this super big, and paint it in.
Wow.
No, that's good. I'm glad. I'm thinking the same thing. I'm looking at what you guys are doing and I'm thinking, wow, myself.
Those are the reactions we want.
Yeah, this is good. This is fun. This is the fun stuff.
I didn't see how you got the sky at the top.
Yeah.
So, you're still on your layer mask. It's active. You see the little white bracket.
So I
Grab
moved
your
mine
brush.
quite a bit, so that what
And
you
I'll
saw.
come around there.
Here, so I'm back at the beginning. You select the image part on your layer. Go to your move tool. And I moved it, so it's the edge of the, that line you're seeing is the edge of the photo that's on top, the edge of the layer that's
That
on
didn't
top.
get masked before,
Right,
but we can still mask over it. So. Okay, so if I really wanted to get super picky on this, don't try to follow me. If I wanted all of that, but I still want more sky, I can actually,
Yes, this is fun.
I'm going to increase the canvas size. So I want more sky, but I want all of the house. So I'm gonna go to image, canvas size. I'm gonna choose this bottom point because that's where I want to expand the canvas from. And I'll do relative. I want to do height, and I'm gonna add like 750 pixels. Now the canvas is actually taller, okay? Again, I'm gonna take the brush, I'm gonna get rid of, oops, make sure I got the right thing selected. Get rid of that additional sky. Now, I'm gonna grab that background, turn it into an image layer so that I can move it. I'll move it as high as I possibly can. It's still, oh, there it is. That's as high as I can. And now, grab my crop tool, get rid of that extra white at the top. And now I've used as much of the sky as possible and as much of the foreground as possible. So and again, I apologize, like that's why I told you not to follow along on that one because the program is vast. So think foundational, think what's possible. Take as much notes, as many notes as you can, play. And then, you know, continue to ask us questions. One of the things I said yesterday to a couple of folks, I didn't say it publicly, Nicole and I are very interested in building community. Yes, you've taken this workshop from us, but that does not mean that you're not allowed to talk to us once the workshop is over. Ask us questions, shoot us messages, give us ideas, and we'll help walk you through things. I hope that you can tell, I'm pretty sure you can, but we like doing this. This is really fun for us. So yeah, we love this kind of stuff.
and there's that Facebook group too that, we developed. It is a private group, so not like anybody in everywhere can see it. It's whoever's in, and it's just people from these workshops.
Yeah.
So you can ask questions there, and somebody might have the answer and get to it before we do. So.
And we might be busy, it might take us a little bit of time, but we will get there.
What's the Facebook called?
It was in the email that Nicole said, it's
Okay.
learn to photog and edit. But yeah, check the email and it's really simple. Just go to the link to request to join the group and then we'll approve you and then you're connected with everybody and you can post photos and we'll tell you, hey, that's awesome, or did you think of doing this, or, you know, whatever, or you can post questions like, I have this photo, don't know what to do with X. What do you think? And, you know, we're happy to continue the conversation. So we really want to help build a community with these things. So, all right, we don't have a ton of time left. Trying to think. I'm almost thinking the next thing I was going to do is going to be too much to start in the next. So I'm trying to think of what we should do here. Uh-oh.
Honestly, anything, if we try to start anything new, we wouldn't be able to do it in 20 minutes.
No, that's why I'm like, now I'm thinking, what do we do in 20 minutes?
But do you have any
Yeah,
questions?
how about
as to what we did,
Yeah,
or?
ask us, why don't you guys give us questions, ask us how to do something like similar or like along these lines, and we'll just continue playing for a little while.
I'd like to just redo this.
Okay, if that's totally fine. Is that something you guys, would that be useful to you guys? You can use your own images. We'll go through the whole process again.
Or you can play for 20 minutes and explore, whatever you want to do.
What we'll go through, we'll demo going through the whole thing again. And then, and so for those of you who want to do it again, if you don't want to do it again, you can play, do your own thing, and then ask questions. What I'll do is, do you want to do individual questions and I'll demo?
We can do
Okay.
that.
So I'll demo going through the whole thing again. And then Nicole will ask and answer individual questions. Before I start that again, I had a really great question, and I want to address that question. So the question was, are there just like sky backgrounds in Photoshop that you could just use? And the answer is no, okay? So I want to make sure, this is kind of an important thing, I don't want to make any assumptions, that you guys understand a little bit about copyright, okay? For educational purposes, we have limited use to use photographs like this for classes like this, for the purposes of teaching. But you do need to know that if you wanted to do something like this, you took a photograph of a house, you should actually be using a photograph of a sky that you took and have copyright of. We can use these for educational purposes. It's covered under a part of copyright law called fair use. You can use it for education and research and things like that. But when you're actually doing your own images, you need to use your own work. And the way copyright law works, just so you guys are aware, copyright begins at the moment of fixation. You do not actually have to do any paperwork to own the copyright of your work. As soon as you create a work, you take a photograph, you own the copyright to your work, right? These are like a lot of misconceptions about copyright that like, if it doesn't have the copyright symbol on it, it's not copyright. That's not the case, so.
And how long, like a professional picture, how long does copyright last?
That's a good question as well. I actually try to simplify copyright discussions by explaining, there is a big, long explanation to that. We are right now governed by copyright law that was mainly put into place in the 1970s. And again, everything is copyrighted at the moment of fixation. Before that, copyright law was tremendously complicated. The way the copyright was applied changed, or the rules changed based on whether it was an individual, it was an organization, where it was created, and like how old it was, like whether or not it was produced before this date. And so my advice to people is, we always assume that everything is copywritten. You always assume, because unless you are a lawyer and a historian and really good at judging how old something is, it's just too difficult to tell if something is in the public domain. Now, there is a thing called Creative Commons that you can access. People put their work out there for Creative Commons licensing, but even that can be tricky. Like Creative Commons licensing may be, you can use the work, but it cannot be manipulated, and you must credit the original author or creator. Or you can use the work and you can manipulate it, but you still have to give credit. So it's just too tricky. And I wouldn't anyone, and chances are you're not gonna get in trouble. I mean, I get that. Like people, like Warner Brothers gets sued for copyright infringement. Microsoft gets sued for copyright infringement because they're massive companies that have money. But we also know that anybody can be sued for anything, and I don't ever want you guys to be in a position where someone decides that they're gonna give you a hard time. Because that could be very scary and expensive. So, just be very, very careful and always, 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 wherever possible, just use your own work. You know, and I know that's like, I want to put a different sky in it. You can look through what you have, maybe you have a sky. Also remember, like once you get to the point where you're editing photographs like this a lot, you see this great sky, you're like, wow, what a great sky. There's not anything really going on in the foreground that's particularly interesting. Just take photographs of the sky so you can use it for editing later, you know?
And it can be different. You can use the same sky photographed over and over and over and over. Because let's say I was like, I don't like how purple that is. I can go down here and change my hue and saturation levels. Whoops, properties. That's a totally, it's the same photo, but it looks completely different.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and actually, what you did just do is like, remind me, like, what gave me another idea too, like, that's a really cool thing, but also like using adjustment layers for like color matching is a big thing too. Like if she removes that or just toggles the visibility out of that, this looks like it matches pretty well, but maybe this should be warmer, and we could use a hue saturation to warm that up too. So
on the
house.
house,
So that the
Oh,
color
yeah.
matches a little better, but it matches pretty well. So anyway, just a thought.
Speaking of like the copyright stuff, is there a way in Photoshop we put our signatures on our?
Yes, we're gonna do that next week. We are gonna show you guys how you can actually put the signature in. We'll also show you something called digital watermark.
yes, I did, and I actually, that was
yeah.
something that I was gonna mention, but Candace wanted to see that as well.
Okay, so yeah, putting your, like a signature on your image or like some kind of symbol on your image. So it actually like indicates this was created by Amy, you know, and then also I'm trying, is digital watermark just under view? I can't remember exactly where it is right now off the top of my head.
You know, I've always done, I've just created a brush. and
Well,
that's
there's,
how I've done mine.
yeah, okay, so there's this thing called digital watermark. You can actually put your copyright information, your copyright claim into the file. It's like not actually on the photo physically,
Oh,
it's in the data. So that when someone looks at the metadata of the file, it shows your
Right here.
information. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, this is called a digital watermark in the metadata.
so right down here, this name right here, that.
Yeah, so this is actually, this is the person who created this. This is actually their information. Okay, so what I will do is I'm gonna revert back. I know we only got 10 minutes left, but I'll go through the process again. We're getting good questions and that's awesome, but I'll revert back. I'll go through this process again. Nikole can go back, can run around and answer individual questions as you guys have them, but I'll just kind of go through the process again here.
If you wanna drive, I put you all the way back.
I appreciate that, thank you. So if you want to follow along, this is really easy to do. So what Nikole did is that there's a couple of ways to do this. She actually did it in the history panel right here. She went back to just to where it was on open. But if you don't want to keep your history, you can also go to File and Revert. File and Revert basically takes the file back to where it was at the very beginning, last time it was saved. Okay, so I'm just gonna take it from the beginning again. So I have the sky photo, it's just as it was when we started. I have the house photo, just as it was when we started. I'm going to
It'll be just-
confirm that I have my move tool selected in the tools panel. It's at the very top right here. The shortcut key for the move tool is also V on the
Follow
keyboard.
along with Jay.
Which one did you choose?
The move tool. Sorry, I will try to project. The move tool, okay?
Little more.
The move tool. All right, David's coaching me here. All right, now we're gonna play that game you'll remember the game. The name of the game is click and drag and don't let go. I'm in the middle of this architectural photograph. I'm clicking, I'm dragging up to the sky photo, and I am not gonna let go. I'm waiting for that to become active. I still have not let go. I come down into the image, and now I can let go. Now that I have the architecture as layer 1 and the background layer is the sunset, I'm going to zoom out. You can do that however you'd like. I like to just hold the control key and hit the minus button a couple of times.
Control what?
Control minus.
Control minus.
Control plus zooms in, control minus zooms out. Really easy shortcut keys. I want to be able to see, the entire bounding box of the image. So as Nicole's right, if I'm holding control, that purple box comes up. I hold control so frequently, sometimes I forget how to do that. All right, now I'm going to access the free transform tool. I can get to that through the edit menu, or I can just I can hold control and press T. Hold control, press T, and now I have that bounding box with the handles. And then I can resize this any way I'd like. Totally up to you how you do that. I feel like when I said I'm totally up to you, I felt like for a moment I was channeling my inner Bob Ross again. Okay. When you're happy with how that is sized, you would then, to complete the transformation, just hit the enter key on the keyboard. Once you have the architecture where you want it, we're going to go back to that quick select tool. At the tools panel, that's the fourth tool from the top. It's also nested with the object selection and the magic wand. So if you don't see it, click and hold over the object selection tool or the magic wand to get that quick selection tool. Okay, you can size the tool with the bracket keys. And then you're just going to paint the sky to isolate the sky from the architecture. Don't worry about it being perfect because we're going to make that mask, and the mask gives us lots of flexibility. It's good practice. I think this is a good thing we're doing it twice. It takes a lot of practice. It takes time. Even the easy, the tools that seem easy, sometimes they foul up. Once you have painted in the sky, we're going to add that layer mask to the layer. So I have layer 1 selected. I got my marching ants around my sky. On my layer panel, I'm going to come down to this little icon, the white square with the white or the gray circle in the middle of it. That's called Add Layer Mask. I click that. It creates the layer mask. And now I have the foundation for how to, for getting the sky isolated the way we want to. Remember, now you can really easily manipulate that mask. All you have to do is grab your paintbrush and paint black to conceal, white to reveal. So I'm going to grab my paintbrush, and I talked about this to a couple of people, but I'm going to reiterate it now that I'm up here. So I've grabbed my brush. I have this one area really that I need to work on. So I'm going to zoom in on that area by pressing Control plus a couple of times. If it goes to an area I don't want, this is a really cool shortcut as well. if I hold the space bar down, I get to move the hand tool, and I can click and drag the canvas around with the hand tool.
Well, actually, if you want to keep it that way, go ahead and do that again.
Now that I'm where I want to be, I'm gonna make that brush a little bit smaller, and I'm gonna show you guys how to do something called shift clicking, okay? Shift clicking makes straight lines for us.
Yep, there you go.
So I can actually click here, just lining up the top of my brush with the top of that architecture, and I click once, and then I let go. Now I'm gonna hold the shift key,
If it's
I'm gonna come out here,
Yep.
and now I click again, and it makes a straight line. I don't actually have to freehand it. Hold shift, click, hold shift, click, hold shift, click, the same thing, click, hold shift, click. And then I get a nice, clean, straight line that way. So shift clicking is our friend. So I click once to set a starting point, and then I can move over someplace else, hold shift and click, and it will create a straight line in between. All right, so now I'm to this point where it's basically, I have the selection or the mask I want. I can press Control-0, and with the layer mask selected, I'm now going to invert the color. I want my white to go black and my black to go white. I'm going to go to Image, Adjustment, and Invert. A really great point that I want to point out to you guys, okay? So she said basically, what happens if I ended up with too much down here? Like, that's the beauty of the layer mask. I want to show you this, okay? The important part to make sure you understand is, I'm not actually deleting anything. Totally non-destructive edit. In fact, if I right click on the layer mask and tell it disable, everything's still there. Nothing has changed. So enable my layer mask. So it's always editable. Okay, all you have to remember is paintbrush, and then black conceals, white reveals. So I'm going to grab my paintbrush. I'm going to switch so that my foreground color is white, and now I can just paint that back.
And now you inverted it.
It just comes back because all it was just hidden. It wasn't deleted. It's not actually gone, right? Yeah.
Right, and I think.
And then just for funsies, because Terry asked me, she said, what if we wanted to actually, we want the orange part of the sky on top, can we flip it? Yes, we can really easily. So on my background layer, I'm going to double click it so that it becomes an image layer. And now I'm going to hit Control-T to transform it. I'm going to zoom out. And now, instead of sizing it, see when I come outside here, now I get the curved double-sided arrow. I'm going to rotate it. And now the sky's on fire.
Can you intensify the colors?
Yeah, I sure can. So I can come. So I'm going to hit Enter to finish that. And now I'll do a hue saturation, just like Nicole was doing before. Hue saturation adjustment layer. And I can pop those colors up even more if I'd like.
Okay, so you went to
Maybe even make it like, let's make it a little darker even.
You went to the background and then what did you?
Double click, if you want to change the background layer from the background layer to an image layer, so you can do all the fun things to it, you double click on the background layer, and then it will say, okay, what do you want this to be an image layer? Do you want to name it something? You can just click OK, tell it layer 0 is fine. Now it's an image layer, and you can do anything with it that you can do with any other image layer, including transforming and flopping it. So right now, there's no background layer. You don't actually have to have a background layer. So you just have to double click on that layer to communicate to the software, I want you to change this background layer to an image layer.
That's really a house.